It should be no surprise that the NASCAR schedule is a huge talking point among fans at all times of the year. Whether it's the current one or the ones to come, there are a lot of people who want to know just about every bit of it. But there's a big question that I think we all ask. It's pretty obvious, but I don't think we really honestly think how far deep it goes when it comes to scheduling in the modern NASCAR era. It's a three-word question. It's simple in asking and complicated in nature. What tracks go? Because there are tracks and races, for instance, that stay for tradition. The Daytona 500, Coke 600, I'd say now the Brickyard 400, and the Southern 500, the crown jewels of NASCAR. They've made mistakes before and getting rid of them, and hopefully you'd think they would learn from those mistakes. Then you look at ISC and SMI. ISC has 17 races plus the Clash, and SMI has 14 races plus the All-Star race. And then you add in the Chicago race for ISC, which counts as another ISC track, and you have 32 of the 36 points races covered by those two companies alone, plus the two non-point races, which leaves you 4 independent or open tracks in some way: Gateway, Iowa, Pocono, and Indianapolis. And many would say, well, if you're NASCAR or SMI, you just take those independent tracks away. To me, I don't think that's a good way to go about it, because all 4 of those independent tracks, while maybe not all serving in a great way for racing overall, all 4 of them are unique to the schedule and do add both racing and schedule diversity. There are a couple possible tracks that could be added to the schedule, 2 of which from ISC are the Auto Club Short Track, if it does happen, as well as Chicagoland Speedway. We'll get into those in a minute. The Kentucky Speedway and Nashville Fairgrounds would be SMI projects, and then while ISC and NASCAR would kind of have these would more be leased or independent races on their own, being Portland, Denver streets, or any street race for that matter, Mexico, Montreal, and The Rock. And I think that, again, those are all tracks that at some point should have races back on the schedule or on the schedule to begin with. But when you're looking at the tracks that are possibilities to be taken off, you're going to realize a bit of a dilemma. It's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to get all or most even of these tracks on the NASCAR schedule. So which ones would go? Well, you got to look at SMI to start with. The Charlotte Roval is a race that I think could go, but only because I think it'll be replaced by the Charlotte Oval at some point. There is no way that SMI gives up one of their golden dates at one of their biggest tracks for, an independent race, a leased out race? I don't see that in any way. And there's no way, in my opinion, NASCAR gives up, as an industry, a hometown race in the middle of the playoffs that can kind of offer as a vacation while at work. So that one is, while on the table, on a different table altogether than the one we're talking about. Then you got the Bristol Spring Race. I think this is a difficult date to sell still. Yes, the crowd was much bigger this last year, but it's not saying that it was huge by any means. This track definitely is not selling all the seats out anytime soon, and television-wise, short tracks have always been difficult sells. Though the Tennessee market still could probably hold that kind of crowd or bigger, and in my opinion, the Tennessee market could be still filled by the Nashville Fairgrounds once the snail-slow negotiation period could maybe finally be ended. With all the effort that you've seen and having another marquee event in Tennessee, on both sides of Tennessee to say that, I think it could really work. The Nashville Superspeedway and SMI have both kind of pledged a long-term commitment when it comes to that track, and when you have Prime coming in and an Amazon base right there, I have a feeling that they're going to want to have that Nashville date as well. Though, again, I still think the Fairgrounds could fit in this slot if they elect to do so. And then there's COTA. COTA is a leased out track by SMI, but at the moment we can technically have it under the SMI umbrella. It's said it'll be back in 2025, and that's based on pretty much any credible report. And at the moment, its date is basically the second Texas date. So if the lease isn't renewed or something happens, well, COTA could go away, but you're going to get Texas Motor Speedway again due to the contracts. So we got the SMI ones out of the way. What about ISC? Well, A lot of people might say Kansas, though they're under contract for the long term, so I don't see how they get out of that without ISC and NASCAR having to pay a lot of money. Darlington, at least the spring date, could be one. I mean, it's a hard sell in person. The audience isn't that good, but viewership is pretty big. It hasn't shown to be a necessity per se on the schedule, as really COVID brought this on, and ever since we've had 2 Darlington dates again. But for the longest time, actually almost 20 years, it was only 1 Darlington date. So that could be one maybe on the radar. Another that people could have on the radar because of the bad racing and the low viewership would be Martinsville, though I think that sacrilege would be hard for NASCAR to sell. You are selling basically that, yeah, we've learned from our mistakes we made with The Rock. We learned from our mistakes we made with North Wilkesboro and moving the Southern 500, but we're going to make the exact same mistake all over again with one of NASCAR's founding tracks, the only track that's been on NASCAR's schedule every single year. I don't buy that, but I could see at some point maybe NASCAR considering it. Homestead could be another one. Without the finale, this track is dull and boring. Yeah, it can have really good racing, but it is irrelevant both to the hardcore fan and the Miami viewer. No one really watches on TV, the attendance is awful, and when it comes to the racing side of things, F1 is kind of taken over that market. NASCAR would have to either move this to the finale or do something immense when it comes to renovations in order to save this track, kind of like what they did with Phoenix's renovations. There is another one that I think would be a really interesting one to talk about, and that is Richmond. Richmond really has no draw to it. No reason, at least, for 2 dates. I think 1 date would be pretty good, a spring date like they have now, but the summer spot on the schedule at the moment would be perfect for a Montreal race. It wouldn't really coincide at all with the F1 race up there, and there wouldn't be an IndyCar race or anything to really mess with it too. Plus, you would be able to broaden your horizons and market. It could be something that NASCAR can sell. Plus, again, Richmond is a facility, not really where Phoenix is by any means, and let's be real, the facility is why Phoenix has 2 dates still, not the track itself. And the last one is Chicago. Chicago was never meant to last forever. This very well could be the last year, and next year is the end of the current contract before any kind of extension talks could be made. This could be an open spot for another street race, whether it's Denver, Pittsburgh, or they do it outside the country altogether. It could be that open spot. But in my opinion, I don't think they're leaving the Chicago area. Chicagoland Speedway is pretty much ready to go. There's still some stuff that would have to be done, but they're already holding races again for other series, and NASCAR has said they need to stay in the Chicago area. So that is something as well with ISC owning the track that could happen. See, this is the part that's really hard just scheduling alone. But then you got to look at the weather factor. Let's go back to Chicagoland for a moment. This track would not be viable for a NASCAR date, at least not a guaranteed one weather-wise, any months that were outside of the months of May, June, July, August, and September. I lived in Illinois for most of my life, and I can tell you right now that it could snow in April, it could snow in October, you could have problems with that, plus there's rain in the spring and fall. Those are big legitimate concerns, and many tracks have these problems with weather as well. I do not envy the person that has to go through all of this, plus the different market factors, in order to make the schedule perfect. And that job, for the most part, lies on Ben Kennedy's shoulders. He's the one who is making a lot of these big moves. And many of us can be upset about the current schedule moves and stuff we may not like or stuff we do like that got moved, but these changes have been needed. From basically the mid to late 1990s until the COVID pandemic, the schedule was virtually stagnant. Between 2001, when a lot of tracks were added on, and 2019, the Roval and Kentucky Speedway were the only new tracks on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. By the early 2010s, it was clearly not working, and NASCAR didn't make the necessary changes, and that staleness only continued into the 2010s when it got damn near unbearable. Changes in the next 3 to 5 years, in my opinion, will be the biggest test of Ben Kennedy's young career running a large portion of this sport. And whether he succeeds or fails will probably lay out at least the first bit of his legacy, and will also lead out whether or not us fans are engaged whatsoever with the new schedules. They can tease stuff all they want, but if the only schedule changes are, say, you move New Hampshire from July to June, then fans aren't really going to care. It's the same schedule. You just sort of shuffled up the deck a little bit. That's it. So for me, that's how I got to lay it out. It is a small question, what tracks go, but it is so complicated. And I want to ask, what tracks do you want on the NASCAR schedule, and what tracks do you think should go? What's going to be needed for that to happen as well? Let me know down in the comments below, lay it all out, and be sure to leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and until next time, have a good one.